Okay, on this test, you will get a formula sheet. Your formula sheet will have these three equations on them. Your formula sheet will not have these words. Your formula sheet won't have this on it. Okay, so on your formula sheet for the test, I won't have that on there. I won't have that on there. Okay, so that's the formula sheet you would get on your test. Okay, so don't rely on me telling you what to do. You need to know those things. Okay, number 1, describe all the transformations. So transformations are words. So can you think about words to describe what could a parabola do? How could it be maneuvered and moved around and things like that? So we're going to probably look at words like moving up and down, left and right. We could flip. We could change the arms by narrowing them or widening them. Okay, I need 4 answers to this question. There's 4 answers to it. Okay, so a negative multiplier, you should be writing that this thing got flipped. Then there is a number in the front, which is 5/2. So my question would be, does it make it narrow or wider? $50-50 chance here. Which one is it? Narrows. Why does it narrow? What do you know about this number? It's bigger than 1. Did I trick you with the fraction? Because 5 divided by 2 is actually 2.5. So it's bigger than 1. And 6 to the, which way? Right. And this would move down. So those are the 4 answers. Okay, number 2, trying to find the information. So vertex, so I'd be a formula sheet and I'd look here and I'd say, oh, if it's exactly like this, there's a subtract and a subtract. So everything's opposite. So when I look at the sheet and I see those negatives, I'm doing opposites. And you guys are taking the x part and then the y part, right? In that order. What is the slope? So the multiplier, so -4. So which direction is this going to open? Upward or downward? Downward. Axis of symmetry, what is that? That's the line that you can cut it with. How do you create a line that goes up and down? I'm just teaching megatensis. How do you graph a vertical line? X equals. Graphing vertical lines are just x's. And which x value would you like to cut through? -3. And where did I find it? I found it on the x of the vertex. Domain should be written how far left to how far right you go. So -infinity to +infinity. I feel like I get 20% of people who write this. For some reason, I get a lot of this, and they get it wrong. What's wrong with somebody answering this? Yeah, they are moving from right to left, and you can't do that. Okay, the range. I'm going to visualize this. And you have to go in an order of what's the lowest to the highest. You have to be in that order. So the low, it's heading downward, so negative infinity, to the highest height of, what's the height up there? Did you pick 10 from your vertex, the height of your vertex? What is the definition of a y-intercept, or what should you do all the time whenever you're getting a y-intercept? X equals 0. Okay, so you are just going to do what you told me. Write your equation, and in your equation, make x 0. Now, this is just math stuff. Can you get your number on that? Algebra. So do your BEDMAS, brackets, then exponents, then multiply, and then put the add, subtract stuff on. Brackets, 3 squared 9 times add. Okay, graphing time. That was a match. Anybody want to confirm a negative 26? Yep, got a head shake or two. Okay, on your test, I will try to put, I give you like plots. I don't know why I didn't on this. Negative 3, 10. Okay, how do I know what to do for moves here? How do I make my moves on my points? I need to make a over-up chart for myself. And I'm going to start that 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 9 pattern, just basic, all the time. That's my start. But this is basic, and I'm going to change things because of the slope. The multiplier, so what happens to the multiplier? Multiplier up. Okay, so I went over 1 and down 4. And I remember it always goes on both sides. Everybody always has a partner except for the vertex. Everybody else has partners. And on your test, I'm expecting you to go to 5 coordinates. So this is 5 coordinates. Does your y-intercept make sense? That's another question you could ask yourself. Does negative 26 make sense to you? Okay, the other side of things. So if I see this on my test, I would say, hey, look, that's in general form. What do I do to get a vertex in general form? And then my reaction should be, hey, use that little formula. Negative b over 2a. So plugging stuff in, you would go positive 2 over 2 times 1. So that is 1. This is nowhere on your formula sheet. You got to know what to do with that 1. So what do you do when you have that number? You need to plug that in. Well, what if x equals 1? Plug it in. What if x equals 1? So I got negative 4. Okay, so the slope is always a. No matter what formula we're looking at, we're always the a number. In this form, it's how many x squareds do you have? That's really what you want to know. How many x squareds do you have? 1, right? 1 x squared. So if the slope is 1, you would open just up, just regular. Axis of symmetry. If you could cut it into the middle. X equals, how many of you do you think you're going to forget that on the test? Probably 5 of you is my guess. So don't be one of those 5. That's the statistics. Don't forget x equals. And 1. X equals 1. That's what you go through. Domain. We're going to go to the same domain as the last time. No matter what. Range. This is different because we have a minimum this time. So also on your test, understand when I use words like minimum and maximum. How to identify if it has a min or a max. Okay, you should understand if it's flipped, it has a max. If it's normal, it has a min, right? I'm not going to have this on my recap. It's something you should understand already. Okay, so the range would be some kind of number and then up. A number and then up. So what is this lowest number? Height of the vertex. Okay, so what happens, we already defined this, what happens if x is 0? What's going to happen to our equation? And the math is actually that fast. Okay, -3, and do you see why I did that? Because if this is 0, x is 0, if that's 0, oh, so 0 minus 3. Okay, x-intercepts. This is a one that's kind of a forgotten one on the test. How do we find x-intercepts? So the idea would be, well, what if y was 0? That's the idea. So what if y was 0? How do you solve this in math? I'm looking for a word, a process. How do you solve that equation in math? You can't do isolation. You can't like move and divide. That's not going to work. You can't get x alone because there's x squareds and x's. You can't just get something alone. Factor. So you're going to factor. That's the only thing you can do right now. You will learn more tools, but we're going to start simple. So I'm going to go 2 brackets. This would have to start with an x and an x. And then do you remember your rules? You're going to have to do multiplies, adds. Multiplies to the end, adds to the middle. So 3 times 1, that's all you got. And you got to get a -2 out of it. Okay, I'm going to actually get you to just plot your x-intercepts for a second. Can you just give me this? That's all I want right now. Your x-intercepts are at 3 and -1. Okay, this could be on the test as just a separate question somewhere. If I give you x-intercepts, how do you find the axis of symmetry? What do you know about the relationship of these 2 points and the axis of symmetry? These are partners, right? So what about every partner? Every partner is in the middle. The axis of symmetry, the cutting line, every partner, you have a cut in the middle of them, right? So what would cut into the middle of these? What number as an x number? X value cuts there? 1, +1. Does it make sense? Because look at our vertex. Our vertex was 1, -4. Okay, so we had our vertex, we had our y-intercept, and then would you agree that that all fits into the 1, 1, 2, 4 pattern? It all fits into there, right? So on your test, you have exactly that, and it's worth 11 points each or something. Okay, you have 1 where you have to graph from standard, 1 in general, 11 points. You got to do all that stuff. I just want to take note here, what if an equation can you do a type for me in your calculator? I want to make sure you know how to type this in properly. Here's an equation. I'm going to give you an x value. Can you do this type for me? Do we all get to the same answer? Just practice your calculator stuff. Do you know how to type that in? Okay, because could be something on the test with some negatives in there, so you just got to make sure you're typing it in properly, because that makes my grading your work a lot easier when you can type it in. Anybody feel super confident in the number they got? What? Anybody want to shout it out because they feel -6? Yeah. So did you type it properly to get that? If you didn't get that, you need to A, try again, ask your neighbor what happened, third option, ask me if it's still not working out for you. Okay? So that typing you need to understand. So brackets are always your friend. Okay, making equations. Making an equation. So I gave you the x-intercepts here. And then you got to make an equation. So here's my question for you. What did I do to get x-intercepts? And this has to be almost memorized, because if you can't think of it, you're going to just be lost. So how did you come up with x-intercepts? And you should have answered to yourself, how did I get them? I factored to get those x-intercepts. So you did something, you factored, and then you came up with those. What we're doing is working backwards. So what were the factors that got you to that? Okay. Then it says that I need to put this into general form. So I'm actually going to need to FOIL that out. That would be the process. Okay, then this person has a deduction on their test for the answer that they gave me. They are not 100% correct. They got 90% on this question. What are they deduction for? Y equals. Okay, look at this. Write an equation, and then you got to have something with an equal then, right? Okay, so test. Right before your test, make sure you review anything with x-intercepts, factoring. X-intercepts, factoring. Okay, a parabola has a vertex at 1, -6. And then it's going to eventually go through the coordinate 3, 6. So would it make sense my vertex is a min or a max? It's a min. So my slope is positive. I can see that already. My slope would be a positive number. I need you to figure out the slope. So let's make an over-up chart here. 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 9. That would be normal. Let's see what we did. Okay, see what you did. What did you do from vertex to that point? Looks like I went over by 2 and I went up by 12. So here's the thing, I'm going to go over 2. Instead of 4, I did 12. So therefore, my slope would have been 3, right? 4 times 3. Okay. Slope, vertex. That's the big idea. Slope and vertex. So you have 2 options. You can either do this one or this one. They both work. Just depends on where you want to put that number. I personally pick this one. I personally picked that one. Okay, if you pick this one, you need to pick opposite plugins when you write it though. Opposite plugins for that one. If you are a person who picked the first method, then the only difference is yours would have had -6 at the end instead. Okay, last question is, write an equation, and I gave you a table. Okay, so I need you to figure out which coordinate would be a vertex, and the hint is that you would see symmetry around it. What would your vertex have to be? And I picked 0, 5 because I saw that there was a 4 and a 4 on the sides of it. So that was the symmetry giveaway. What would be a coordinate up here if I kept my chart going up? What would be the coordinate there? -2, comma, 1, right? Because it would be partners. You see all my partners? 4 and a 4 has a partner, a 1 and a 1. Okay, so the vertex is 0, 5. And you better figure out what the slope would be next. That's the next thing. Okay, so let's talk about this move right here. I went, bless you, I went over 1, and then from 5 to 4 means I went down 1. I went over 1 and then I went down 1. Can you figure out your slope from just that? Over 1, down 1 means your slope is -1. Okay, so I'm going to use the same format. I'm going to use this formula, and I'm going to plug in my stuff. Okay, so I'm going to put a -1 in front of the bracket multiplier. 0 would go there, -5 would go there. I'm going to make this look prettier because this is weird looking for me in math because I don't want -0. So it doesn't matter to me. I like both of those options to kind of finalize your equation.
Does it matter if there's brackets around the -x squared?
Yes, kind of. What did you do? Did you do this?
No, like the square was on the outside of the x.
You did this? Like that?
Negative It's negative bracket and x bracket squared.
Oh, this?
Yeah.
That's fine. This would be wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is good, that's fine. This would be wrong though if you had done that by. Okay, complete the square. As soon as I say complete the square, do you remember your oath? What is your oath to me? You will never ever complete the square until it is a what? Simple trinomial. Is this a simple trinomial? No. Okay, so step 1. Move the number out. Step 2. You need the multiplier out. That's what you need. Because remember your end goal. Your end goal is this, which has your multiplier out in the front, right? That's your end goal. So -2 needs to be out of this now. Okay, so what does everything change to after you take a -2 out of it? This term is just an x squared now. And this term also changes to be a plus 8x. And now you can do it. So I got my simple trinomial, right? That was my goal. Simple trinomial. What do you want to end your simple trinomial with? So complete the square is only ending on simple trinomials, right? I couldn't do it with the 16. I had to wait. What do you want to put in the end of your trinomial? So what is the process of complete the square? You have to do something and something. Split in half and then square. Half is 4, squared is 16. Okay, that was something that didn't exist, so it changed my teeter-totter because it wasn't there before. What are you going to change the other side by? And be careful. The answer is not add 16, so be careful. What are you going to add? What are you going to put on the other side? -32. Okay, make sure your final form looks exactly like this. It's on your formula sheet, so follow it along. Y subtract 3, -2 brackets binomial squared. Okay, on your test, this should be the only spot you ever do this process. This process is not needed anywhere else. So on your test, there should be only one spot where you do this. On your test, I gave you one that starts as a simple and one that starts as a complex. So you have 2 questions on your test. Okay, so a sportswear store sells the baseball caps, and they're trying to make revenue from selling baseball caps. Okay, so the revenue, and we're selling baseball caps. So would you agree that the revenue would be the price per hat times the number of hats? Would that make sense in real life? However much each hat is times the number of hats gets you your money. So revenue equals, and then let's just open up 2 brackets and fill in stuff later. Okay, so I'm going to go back and read more of the question now. The store sold 600 caps. So I'm going to put that into the number bracket. They sold 600, and that was when the price was $15. It's indicated for every $1.50 that you go up in price. So make the price go. So price go up $1.50. This would cause a decrease in 30 hats. And what else do you need to put into this? An X. So if this goes up a few times, this goes down a few times, etc. Okay, so the rest of it is just math stuff you know how to do. So what is the next step in this equation? What would you think to do next? FOIL. FOIL would be your next thought. So multiply this out. Okay, I'm gonna collect as well. Okay, so this is your equation, and you're trying to talk about maximizing your revenue. That's the whole purpose of this question. Does it make sense that we would have a max? How do I know that I do have a max? What shows me that I have a max? A negative x squared shows me that, yeah, I do have a max. Okay, how do I find info about this max? Vertex stuff, right? Vertex. What do? Vertex. So if you're looking like this, what do you do to get a vertex? Negative b over 2a. So do you have all your letters written down? Like this would be the b. This over here is actually the a. Okay, it's not the order, it's all about x squareds. So negative 450 and is anybody else getting 5 out of that? So really, what does 5 represent to you? 5 represents how many times you're going to do the change. I'm going to change the price, change the price, change the price, change the price. I'm going to do that 5 times. That's what this is. So question 1, what should you make as your hat price? So how much should each hat cost? We now know that X is 5, but the hat is not $5. That's not the answer. So what are you going to do? You're going to go here, and you're going to start at $15, and then you're going to do a price increase 5 times. So each hat you should sell for $22.50. So again, X is not the price of the hat. X is how many times you change the price. Okay. There's another question. What is the highest revenue? So what do you do to get the revenue? Revenue equals, and then I've listed this whole thing. So the revenue equals 9,000 plus 450. Look at that, we know X to plug in. This is a plug-in. Okay, so again, on your test, you would see 100% chance you're going to see that question. So know where to plug X into when you're done. You will always get that X, but then where do you plug it in to get your answers? Okay, so this is a barnyard question. So you have a rectangular fenced area. There will be one fence down the middle, and that would divide it into two sections. So there's your drawing. And then on my drawing, I'm going to put lengths and widths. And I have 300 yards of fencing to put all along that. So I'm going to go, if I have 2 of those lengths plus 3 of those widths, I'm going to make 300 yards of fence. Okay, so the question now is what's going to maximize the area? So let's talk about area. Area equals, and I'm not going to give you this formula, I'm expecting you to know, length times width is the area of a rectangle. Okay, so trying to maximize the area, we want a quadratic. That's not going to happen because I got too many letters going on. So we're going to try to use the information given and use letters to put in. This is the substitution one. So here's where I'm going to start. Which letter is easier to get alone? Would you want to try to get the L by itself or the W? And the pick would be the L. Whatever you have fewer of would just be the pick. So that would mean what? Move the W out. If you're trying to get the L alone, you got to move the W stuff. And then it's like giving candy to children. If you're going to divide, you got to do it to everything. Okay, so this is going to be a legit math maneuver. If this is equal to L, would it be okay if I replaced L with that? Does that make sense in math? You can make a replacement, a substitution for an equal amount. So there, that's what I was doing there. I made a replacement. Now we're kind of at the same point as we were on the last question. So this is the next step, is just math stuff. What would you do if your equation looked like this? you should think to, not really FOIL, but distribute it. And you have an equation that's a quadratic. So how do you start the process of finding max? What do we always start the process of finding a max? I should be doing a negative b over 2a method, right? Because I'm trying to get to a vertex. So negative b would be a negative 150. So I got 50 out of that. And remember, if you are typing this in, if I was a person who typed this in, I would get it wrong. If you're a calculator typer, this is wrong. Make sure you put brackets on that, okay? Okay, so 50 is normally our x, but I actually don't have an x this time. So just tell me what letter is in the spot instead of x. Would you have picked a W instead of an X? So I know that this side, that side of my rectangle is going to be 50 yards. And the question is saying, what are the dimensions? So I still would need to find what the length would be. So you can go into this formula and plug in to get the length. Or some of you might just do some mental math and add up from your diagram or whatever you're doing to get the end. Okay. There could have been a question that said, what's the largest area? So what would you do to get me an answer for that? How would you find the largest area now? You could just times these, right? Length times width. You could just times them now that you have them. Or you could have put the 50 into this type. That would get you, look at the equals, it would equal area. Okay, they both should get you to the same number though. Okay, I just want to, because I think there should be a little bit of room, I want to give you a little bit of a diagram. Let's draw somebody throwing a baseball. Show me what it would look like on a graph. If somebody was drawing a baseball, or throwing a baseball. Okay, so would this make sense that this variable along the x would be probably the time of the throw, and this would be the height of the ball? Okay, this coordinate here is called the y-intercept. What does it represent in the context? In words. I wanted a word answer. So on your test, can you explain what let's pretend the coordinate was 0, 7. What would the 7 represent? The height when you what? When you threw it. so I'm going to say the starting height. He said the height when the person threw it. So the starting height. It would actually be your arm extension. So when your arm is extended and you release, what's the height of the ball? Okay, so this coordinate is the vertex. It would technically have two parts to it. It would have a number, comma, a number, right? If you wrote it. So what, in words, what would that represent? Just the x. This is the highest point. The vertex is the highest point, but specifically, what does this number tell me? The time of when it reached highest. Yep. So then, what would this number tell me about the scenario? So your vertex, can you visualize it better if I put some values on it like this? 2,45 or something like that. So you just told me time. So 2 seconds to get to the top. And then what would this number be? It would be the highest height. And then there'd be a coordinate right there that would be special. What does it represent? It would be the x-intercept, but what is it going to tell me about the scenario? And I can give you kind of something like 10, 0. So that's an example of what it could look like as a number. So what does it represent in words? In words, x-intercept. When, because it's a time when it landed or hit the ground. Okay. There's going to be some questions on there that make you interpret that stuff. Okay. So you have to figure out how to get your equation, get your info, and you need to understand what each spot is meaning in real life so that you can answer the questions, okay?